welcome to Scrapbooking Station. In this video it's about a waterfall card. I've never made one, so if you've never made one or purchased the card blanks all ready to go, this is a way to understand kind of the elements that make up the specialty card. And I'm going to create two demos and then show another sample. So I'm going to put the camera over my shoulder and we'll get started. So let's begin by looking at the elements that make up a waterfall card. So you need things that are going to flip. And this can number from 3 to 5 to 6, however large your card base is going to be and what you want to put on them. So what you've got are these flips, and the mechanism I'm going to call an arm that slides, that flips your images over. So it's going to go like so. And then the last element is going to be a strip, or I'm going to call it a strip, but it's actually the clasp that's going to allow this to slide back and forth. Now, the orientation doesn't matter much. You can go landscape, or you can go tall and have things flipping up like so. So anyway, we're going to move right into the first project. So I've got my elements picked out, and I'm going to go with 4 1 3/4 flips, and that's going to be this piece. I've already stamped them, and then I'm going to back each one. So I'm going to mat it, and I'm going to mat it with a 2-inch square. So I've got 4 2-inch squares. And the great thing about this is double-sided pattern paper. So as each one flips, I can get a different pattern coming over. Now your arm. Your arm has to have as many score lines, and they need to be equal apart. I went with 3/4 inches in this first project. And it needs to be narrow enough to fit behind your flips, so you cannot see it. And that's really the only requirement. As far as length, when you fold over on that last score line, you want it to stick out. So I would make this as long as you think you're going to need, because this is really a design element as far as where it finishes on the panel of your card front. So we're going to take a look at that as we get further along in the assembly. Now I went ahead and cut my strip, and so this is far longer than it needs to be, because remember, it only needs to be tacked on top and bottom in this case, and then this has to slide freely underneath it. So you really don't want anything that's going to catch, either on your strip or on your flips. So let me put some adhesive down. I'll mat and layer these, and we'll start putting it together. Okay, I want to back up one step because I want to redo my strip. Now I started with 8.5 length of cardstock, and that's just because it's an easy measurement out of a plain piece of 8.5 by 11. But I then decided that my base card was going to be 7 by 4.5, and so I was concerned that this short a strip is not going to give me a lot of options as far as positioning. And like I said, as we start assembling, we're going to take a look at that. But I really didn't talk about making this so much. So remember, my flips are 2 inches. I just went with a 1.5 inch piece of or width of strip, and that's going to hide behind there really well. So if for no other reason than it's easy math, I'm going to start off by first scoring at 1.5, and I'm just going to tilt it this way so I can see what I'm doing. So my first score line is going to make my strip square. Then I'm going to come 3 more scores 3/4 inches apart. And that is how you make your arm. So I'm finished with 4 score lines because I've got 4 flips. And then when I fold back this last piece, I've got plenty to work with as far as positioning on my card and also being able to pull this arm across. Okay, let me finish up those other pieces and we'll start putting it together. So what I have here are my flips, and I've got my arm. And what I've done with my arm is I put adhesive right up against, well actually it's not right up against, it's just to the right of each score line. And so that's how we're going to attach these flips. Now I've arranged them from, this is what's going to be on top, and then the next one, and then this is going to be the last message. And because I've got the score lines 3/4 inches apart, when they are flat, they're going to be something like this. So quite a bit of this image is exposed, and if you want less exposed, you want to make these score lines closer together. If you don't mind that they're spread out because of, you know, the size of your card or your card design, you'd make them farther apart. Of course, then your strip needs to be longer. Anywho, what I want to do is start with the last one first. So let me just peel off this top of this strip. And for each one, what I'm going to do Well, first off, let me kind of get it square on this mat. I'm just using this mat as a guideline because I do want it somewhat centered, but I want it bumped up right against that first score line. Actually, this is going to work great because I've got this centered on a 2-inch pair of lines. So I'm going to put this one. Now I'm going to continue and put this one next, and this one, and then this one. This next bit of assembly is really about what looks good to you. Because again, you've got the strip that's going to funnel your arm. So it's going to hold your arm. Got a little bit of adhesive. So this is quite arbitrary. The only thing is that, it's wide enough, it's tacked down wide enough so that this moves. And then the other thing is that we tack it down here. And so that's going to hold its place on the card as you flip. So like I said, totally arbitrary. I decided to come up above this first row of tulips and go to the edge of my card. Of course, I decorated it here on either end, and so I've got a little bit of room for both of these things because I don't want these in the way of my flip either. So once I got that positioned, I've got this positioned. Before I tack anything down, I kind of want to situate it where I want it. So I'm going to mark the edge of this because what I want to do now is kind of sculpt the end of this tab. If you've noticed, I went ahead and notched this because I think the more obvious you make this, that someone's got to pull it, the more when the person receives the card is know that they have to pull it to make it flip. So let me go cut, before I tack this down, I'm going to go trim this edge. So kind of set it up where I want it on my card. So it's going to be something like so, widthwise, and then I just want to mark that. Let me grab a pencil. And I'm going to use the top of this tag because it comes with a washer type of die cut, because I noticed that when I built my little sample here, or prototype, that this pull gets a little bit of stress. So I want to reinforce that. So I'll be back with those pieces, and I'm going to pop it on top of my card, and we'll be done with the first project. And here's the finished first project. So, got everything on board, and when I pull it, and those of you who've seen waterfall cards before are saying, you forgot to stamp the secret greeting. Well, no, I didn't. Since I'm working with really more the design of the card, I would not stamp that first, because you don't know how much room you're going to have. So I'd mark it just with a tick here, open it all the way up once I got it put together. That's why I know how much space I have for this secret message. Okay, on the inside, I just went ahead and stamped "Have a Fabulous Day" on the inside, added another bird, using kind of the same colors and materials. And then, of course, created the envelope. So let's talk about these materials. And so first off, kind of the start of the show is a Hunky Dory box collection. It's Sweet Tweets is actually the name of the collection, and it comes with a stamp set. Also, it comes with insert paper, and so I don't want to offend any hunky-holics, but Hunky Dory is very matchy-matchy. So for your flap of your envelope, that's a good place to go. Also, because this card's got such a high profile, by the time you get done with that, you've got a couple layers of cardstock and paper here. So I would add maybe another 1/8 of an inch if you make your own envelopes. If you buy your own envelopes and base cards, they're typically large enough, way large enough, to go ahead and accommodate this card. The other thing I used was some Stampin' Up! Material. So I've got Gumball Green is the color I chose to coordinate for the little notch in here. I had a 1 1/4 inch punch also from them. And then Happy Birthday is an older stamp set, actually from about 20 years ago. And then lastly, 10 tags and trims from Paper Wishes, hot off the press. And that's what I used to create this top image. So anyway, I'm going to leave photos of this project. This card is obviously not for everybody, but I'm thinking anyone that loves gadgets is going to love it. Little kids will love it. Maybe I would even write pull for your smaller children, so they know that this needs to pull. And then guys who love gadgets, and that's what we're going to work on next. But I'm going to begin at the very beginning, which is the design phase, and talk about the images, and that's going to determine how the rest of the card's going to evolve. Okay, in the second project, I'm going to do Waterfall. It's going to be going the other way because what I want are me and the boys skydiving out of an airplane. And so I know I need 5 panels, and I know the widest of these has to fit this airplane, at least. Possibly a couple clouds. And so I went with 3 1/8 inches wide by 1 3/4. And then I've got mats for each of my pieces, so I'm at 3 3/8. So first thing I want to do is the arm. So I want to decide how far apart these are. And I like the 3/4 inches. So I made my arm, and I started with a section here that's 1 3/4 because I know it's going to fit totally behind that, and then 3/4 for 5 score lines. And of course, fold it back under. Again, I want to leave it nice and long. Now I want to decide on my card base, which I already did. So I'm going to be dropping, of course, out of the sky. And so I already put my strip across. Again, more to the design, but also considering if I placed my arm, the top of my arm, all the way at the top of my card, this is going to be perfect for positioning this piece onto here. Then, of course, I want to go trim it. So once I have my color scheme, I went ahead and stamped and colored all my images. So let me flip all those over. So this is how the waterfall is going to progress. Let me see. Yep, it's all in there. So next step is, of course, to get them on there. So again, I'm going to put adhesive up to the score line for each 5 pieces, and then we're going to position this on the card base. So I've got my flips all positioned on my arm. And I want to talk about the placement of this strip one more time, because there's 2 things. Let me first off flip this over, because what has to happen is what needs to stick here is really anywhere inside this last flip. So I can attach it here all the way up to there. I don't want it going up into my second score line area. And of course, I don't want it falling off either. And the only other requirement is then that the top of your card fits. So you've got a lot of wiggle room to play where the strip could be. And then I just used the artwork to kind of position it in what I thought was the best spot. So the other thing I did when I attached it also is I made sure I had a couple thicknesses of cardstock and then attached it. And so you can see it actually does bow up a little bit. So hopefully giving me enough clearance to get these through. And so now what I want to do is go ahead and position it where I want to before I stick anything down. Of course, I want it centered perfectly. And then I'm going to mark it at the edge of this blue mat. So I don't want it going all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to mark it at the edge. And then I've got a strip that I want to decorate on the inside here. So when it pulls down, it's going to expose, it's getting caught up here. It's going to expose this building and sky, and we're going to say happy birthday up in there. Of course, I want to give it some sort of curve at the bottom as well. Actually, you're not seeing that. So when I pull it, I'm going to have the city show up, happy birthday. Okay, I'm going to get those last couple of pieces on, and then we're going to look at the finished second project. So here's my second project all finished up. I went ahead and just kind of clipped the corners of this piece, added a little ribbon. I did put a eyelet in here just for, you know, a little bit added strength, because like I said, this is pretty stressful little piece of your card. So as I flip, well, first off, I've got my plane coming up, and then that would be me sky jumping, and then this is Spuddy, my dog, and then lastly comes my cat, and then the message here is flying by to say, and you can see happy birthday to you. So that's how it finishes up. Now, I did actually leave a border here, and I found that when I'm pushing this back in, so you've got to come, you know, pretty close to the top, but it was catching on the tip of this border. So I added another strip right up against the score line. So maybe not such a great idea to have more than one layer on your arm. And so that's how all this happens. And then on the inside, I just left a place to do some writing. So more of that pattern cardstock. So let's talk about these elements. Of course, I'm going to make a matching envelope. But again, I've got some hunky-dory. So I've got Pretty Little City. That is a collection that came with issue 41 of their magazine. Then I've got Plain Cute, which is one of their stamp sets. The coordinating cardstock I use comes from Crate and Craft, so I just picked 2 blues and it's double-sided. Notice I did kind of alternate between my mats, so that's something interesting. Then the coloring and the inks are all Stampin' Up, so just use coordinating colors to that pattern paper. And then, I don't know if you noticed, but the clouds have little highlights. Let's catch that. So, that's done with Cosmic Shimmer paints. And I love them because you can go like this, and they dry quickly, but it's not going to pick up ever. Not at all. So, a couple things besides this that I noticed is that, I talked about the profile of these flips. But really, they turn over, and so what goes through your strip on your arm is the backside, so really smooth. So I'm thinking that for the profile of these flips, you can use die cuts. I would even put sequins on there, because once it turns over, as long as your strip gives enough clearance for your flips to go by, you're good to go. So I've got, well, first off, let me leave photos of this, and then I've got one more sample to just show you. Okay, by the time you make a couple, and the reason I don't spoon feed dimensions and rather teach you the relationship between the elements is you can do what you want. So this is sort of a just coordinating set of elements, but I think the structure really works if you're either telling a story, like I sort of did in this, or some sort of progression. So we've got a plane, people jumping out of the plane, and then the message. And then I thought, well, I'm still learning as I go. So this is actually, between the prototype and the 2 samples, my 4th waterfall card. And I thought about mom, dad, you can go up to 5 letters, but I think this would be great for your large letters. And that's actually what this is. This is a large letter die. And again, I'm adding die cuts here because determining the smoothness. The other thing is a shape. As long as it's got a flat edge, so I'm thinking if you would go this way, a pennant or some sort of banner shape would work well with letters. But we're just going to come across and we're going to say boo. So in this case, I recognize that this is 1.5 inches, and so this strip is 1.25 inches, so it hides behind there nicely. And I just matted my boo layers. The other thing I'm noticing in this sample is that you do have a little bit of reveal on this end as well. And so that's how I created this. So let me tuck this back in. We'll just take a look at the inside. So I did some more stamping in here. But this is a great little Halloween card with their coordinating envelope. I will go ahead and share these materials. So first off, those hexagons are from Tattered Lace. So they're mini hexagons. Cutting die, the large letters come from Stampin' Up, as does the cardstock and niblets of pattern paper, because I am really down to it on that. The stamps on the inside, Hampton Arts did my Happy Halloween, and that are my Halloween images, and then an old stamp set from Stampin' Up, Autumn Apparitions. So anyway, I sure hope you give the structure a try. It doesn't take long for you to become familiar with the dependencies and the mechanisms involved, and I thank you for watching.